The Cold Omaha Podcast Network.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Callais podcast. We're back after our Memorial Day weekend layoff. I hope you enjoyed our clip show, because I certainly did not enjoy listening to myself be drunk many times on air while editing that. But that's the brand I've set for myself. I am Giles Farrell. Across the table from me is Ben Remington. Hello. I forgot he didn't have a mic. Genuinely forgot. I looked at him like, why aren't you saying things? I should have gone last. You should have gone last. But yeah, Ben and I are sharing a mic because we have two guests for you today. And I don't know if that's special or not. They're special in their own way. But
my mom says so anyway.
We have some repeat guests from last season. And the first one, as you just heard, was now shuffling chairs, is Bryan Reynolds.
Hello, Giles.
And then across the table from him is our friend Taylor Callais. Is that right?
Nailed it.
Good. I was worried. I was genuinely worried.
I was waiting. That pause was about a half a second, yeah. But it was more. That was a pregnant pause.
Yeah.
I like to call him Cialis. It works really well. There's a story behind. No, wait, what?
No. There's no story behind it. We're not going down that road. Not yet, at least. Because we're about 3 beers in, so who knows where this is going to go. But it's actually a good week for them to join us, because there's really no wild news to talk about.
You can tell they were scraping the bottom of the barrel here. They were looking for guests, so they called out to Bryan and I, and we like to drink beer, and we like to hear the sound of our own voice, so here we are.
Yeah. Ben, too.
That's why I don't have one.
You'll see. It's all background noise now. You got the laugh in the background, but
actually, here I'm going to give the mic to Ben so he can say words.
I don't know why you'd want to do that. That doesn't seem to ever be a good idea. So yeah. Anyway,
a few minutes
yeah, he needs time to drink. So the only wild news of the week was Scott Stevens essentially retiring, or resigning, more accurately, from the Wild bench. Going to move back to New Jersey and probably spend some time on NHL Network, I would assume, because it's right in his backyard. But obviously going to be spending a lot more time with his family. So you guys aren't, you may or may not have your finger on the pulse of the Wild. What are your thoughts on that general move as both fathers as you are and hockey fans as well?
Well, for me, I mean, as you said, being a father of 3, I get it. I've passed up fairly lucrative opportunities in my career field because they're like, let's move your kids to Boston. And no, I'm not moving my children to Boston. At the same time, it sucks, because the defense, I think, this year played about as well as they've ever played.
Yeah.
You've got a ton of defensive prospects coming up, and who doesn't want Scott Stevens there to teach them how to play the game?
Right.
I mean, I think his influence was clear. Sort of piggyback on what Bryan said. I did think that, generally speaking, the defense did perform better in previous years. Whether that was his influence or just experience, that's sort of, I guess, up for debate. But as far as prioritizing his family, absolutely. I mean, I think he's well off enough to where he doesn't necessarily need the job. This isn't sort of a paycheck situation, but he's moved back. It'll be curious. I know I've heard and maybe this is laughable, but I've heard Phil Housley's name thrown out as sort of a replacement. Whether that's good or bad, I'll let you.
He won't be a replacement here because he's going to be head coach. He's going to. Don't get me wrong. I would absolutely love for him to come here. If he's leaving Nashville, he's leaving to take a head coaching job.
One of us.
Hashtag one of us. No, and it was actually the only sort of reputable source that I heard throw his name out was the venerable Lou Nanny on Dan Barrero's show last week. So
that explains that. I think that's the interesting thing, and obviously missing Scott Stevens it sucks, but it does open up a coaching position, and you got to think that a lot of guys would be pretty willing to coach under Bruce Boudreau. He's obviously a pretty popular guy, and his results kind of speak for themselves. Comments about 5 games in April withheld, but it'll be interesting to see who they get to replace him, basically. And like I said, I doubt Phil Housley's on that, but there's probably a fair amount of, maybe there's some other up-and-coming, defensive coaches or former NHL defensemen even that might take that role, because Boudreau is a very veteran guy. John Anderson is a very veteran guy.
Is Chris Pronger available?
Does he still work for the Department of Player Safety? I don't even keep up with these things.
Isn't he still under contract?
He's technically an Arizona Coyote, yes. But you could ask him. I don't know.
Really certain Alexei Yashin is still under contract as well. So
probably. Ilya Kovalchuk is sort of under contract, but wanting to come back. There's a lot of deals like that. I don't know. I think it's unfortunate. As you guys mentioned, I think the defense did play better this year, but who knows? I mean, we'll see. I guess we can kind of judge the move when we find out who his replacement is, and maybe
they'll just move Ryan Suter up. I mean,
he's player coach.
He's going to be a player coach like Paul Newman in Slapshot.
I got it. So when it's John Anderson's time to leave, they will promote Zach Parise to that position so he can coach the forwards, and then Ryan Suter will coach the defense. See, it's all coming together here.
It works out perfect.
And the head coach, when it's Boudreau's time to go, will be, you guessed it, Adam Oates. That makes perfect sense.
Well, one thing we forgot to mention, we can't hire Steve Ott to replace Scott Stevens because he got hired as a coach for the Blues, which is
coach of
St. Louis Blues,
but what is he coaching?
This is
I don't have anything clever.
Emotional
PG podcast.
Yeah,
I can't say the things that I want to say. He's the coach of S-staining. We'll put it that way. He's the coach of. Yeah, I don't. there isn't anything that I can say that's not bleepable, which will make Giles do enough work.
So unlike probably many fans of the Wild, because they are a Central Division team, I have a lot of respect for the Blues organization.
Okay. Sure.
They do a lot of things right.
Yep.
One of my favorite people in the world is running their social media.
Okay.
Yep.
Correctly called out a racist commenter during the
beautiful
Preds Blues series.
Absolutely beautiful.
That is how to social media right.
Right. And then they turn around and they hire Steve Ott. And I had to dial back. I had to summon all of the wherewithal that I learned to not cheer in the press box kind of thing, right? Because let's face it, you want to, and you have to find a way not to. Somehow I didn't tweet like a dear leader tweet storm on Twitter about Steve Ott being hired as a coach. I'm not quite sure how I did it, but I mustered it, and a few days went by, and then I didn't care anymore. So
yeah, that is impressive restraint on your part, though, I got to say. I didn't have such restraint.
Sometimes
I laughed at it immediately.
There actually is a filter between my brain and my mouth. Sometimes it actually works. Sometimes. Very rarely.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It just, what could he possibly bring to a coaching? I just don't understand it. And it's not like Yo's ever coached him. He's not a Mike Yo guy.
Grit.
Okay, yeah.
Sandpaper.
Truculence.
Yeah, he's the head coach of Grits. That's
Head
what
coach
he.
of Grit.
That's all he brings to the table.
I gotta imagine that pays pretty well.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, that's the only reason why you retire as an S-stain hockey player.
He saw that he wasn't going to make enough money as a player next year, so he decided to retire and then become a coach, which will pay him better next year. It all makes sense. And everyone takes a sip of their drink.
That was more than a sip.
I have many unsuitable things to say about Steve Ott, so like Mr. Reynolds here, I'll just filter that all out into nothing because it can't make it onto this show now.
Are we going to call this the S-Stain podcast then? Is that sort of the...
Yeah, that's
if we're
probably
talking about
be
titles?
the title. Yeah, the S-Stain podcast.
That's appropriate with Bryan and I on, for sure.
That was really the only wild, newsworthy thing that's really happened since we last recorded it. We're getting close to the end of the Stanley Cup Finals, so we're probably going to get more newsworthy things happen once that finally ends. But are you guys keeping up with the Stanley Cup playoffs at all, or not really, or how are you doing with it?
In the final, yes. I have yet to watch an entire full game. As we were talking about before the podcast, I was actually in Nashville this week while they were in Pittsburgh and had planned completely to walk down and watch with the fans, and then they lost 5-1. Was that the score? And it was tied late, right?
Yeah.
And they gave up an ungodly amount of goals, and the fans coming away from the building did not look pleasant, so I just went back to the bar.
I got to be honest, this may shock you, Ben, but during Game 1, which was Memorial Day, I was partaking in some Memorial Day drinking, so my memory of Game 1 is slim to none.
This is hard to believe.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, who drinks on Memorial Day?
Our listeners
Come
are
on.
just shocked that happened.
So if you're this Jake Gensel guy, I mean, it's a brand new name, I'm sure, to Minnesota fans. So
Nobody knows who he is.
One of us. No,
Tell the story, Giles. What pick was he drafted with?
As I pointed out this week, I was just doing some research on an article. I know, shocking, I do research. I found out that Jake Gensel was picked with the Wild's third-round pick in, I want to say it was 2012, that was sent to the Flyers for Darryl Powell. And then it was traded twice after. So the Wild sent a third-round pick to Philly for Darryl Powell, and then 2 trades later it ended up with Pittsburgh, who drafted Jake Gensel. So there is your how the Wild could have had Jake Gensel story.
What you're saying is that he begged to sign with the Wild, but they refused, and now he's...
And traded the pick on purpose so they
absolutely.
couldn't take him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Jake Gensel is like Eric Johnson now, not one of us.
He's been rescinded.
He was dishonorably discharged from the one of us status.
You're comparing him to Eric Johnson, though. Eric Johnson's kind of...
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty unfair.
It wasn't up to him. That's not a fair cut to Jake.
And putting anybody on Eric Johnson's level, I feel like, is probably... I mean, except Steve Ott, I guess. But, like, it just seems like that's kind of unfair.
Is it a Colorado thing?
Possibly. Yeah, very possibly. I mean... Well, and also something we haven't talked about yet, how Giles' favorite current NHLer, Cody McLeod, is going to potentially be on the Stanley Cup, as is James Neal. And my thought on it is a team has both Cody McLeod and James Neal, and yet somehow people are still rooting for that team, like on a national level. Like hockey fans are actually rooting for that team, which I'm not saying I'm not. I'm not really going
That's
either way
called
with
the
it,
Carrie Underwood factor.
You're probably right about that.
It's genuinely cool to see Nashville, the market, do well with hockey because, as I mentioned yesterday on Twitter, I would love to go to Nashville now to see a hockey game because it's a party town, and, well, I'm not one to shy away from that. But Nashville, the team, has more dislikable qualities, so I can't fully get behind them. Cody McLeod being front and center of that.
So on the Nashville thing, back when I still knew how to write words and spell them and such.
I still don't.
There was a Nashville blog called Cell Block 303.
Yeah.
Is that still around?
Yep.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, people would come to the comment section and just blast them for being childish and using college chants at an NHL level game. And I was like, maybe we should do some of that here, because I mean, it's a cerebral game for sure, St. Paul, but you do have a voice box.
Well, and that's the thing that I really like what Nashville does. I like the college chants. It's the crowd at a Minnesota game, at a Golden Gophers game, is so much more fun than the crowd at a Wild game. I don't think it's even comparable.
1,000 times, yeah.
It was more fun in the WCHA era.
True. That's true news.
That's a solid clarification. Solid clarification.
Eat a giant bag of Barry Alvarez.
No, but I think you're right.
I endorse that message.
But now, I mean, yeah, you get the goalie chants, and so any Wild fan crapping on that practice needs to look at themselves in the mirror for chanting at goalies that are currently shutting you out in a game because you think that that's what you're supposed to do.
Maybe we should use like Cell Block 303 as a test to get into the arena in St. Paul.
It's a template.
Are you going to chant at the goalie when he's shutting out your team? Yes or no? Yes. Sorry, we're giving your ticket to somebody else.
You can go walk over to the livery and...
Well, and it's a game. Are you there? Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah.
Are you not pissing somebody else off? And by that I mean, are you not dumping beer on someone, being a complete jackass?
So being a Jets fan.
I was about to say, so if I'm checking all of these boxes, what does that mean? So apparently I'm a Jets fan.
You're currently on probation. You're not disallowed, but... No, I think there needs to be more. I mean, I think that's the beauty of it, is each fan base should have sort of their own unique approach to how they support their team, how they, how that atmosphere is in the arena. I in a previous job was able to go to Nassau Coliseum before they moved to Brooklyn. It was a dump. I mean, it was a very old, run-down arena. But the atmosphere was, compared to, and I hate to say, I mean, I'm sorry, compared to XL, was
miles
off the charts. I mean, the place was shaking, and this was a regular season game against the LA Kings.
To be fair, it was structurally unsound.
That's fair.
So the shaking may not have been people cheering.
It did shake when I walked in before the game, so... No, but I mean, it just... their fans are out of their mind, and, I have a good friend who's an Islanders fan, has been for years, and he hates the atmosphere at the X, and he's like, they sit on their hands, they don't do much, it's... so if Nashville wants to be immature or whatever that, so whatever the critiques are, God bless them. Like, go for it. Like, do your thing. Be unique. We've got some technical setups here. We're going to give you some inside baseball on.
I tried. No, I was going to say, I was watching the game last night, game 3. And, you see the crowd standing for most of the game, and I'm just sitting there going, see, I would love to do that just from a fan's perspective. And in fact, I tried that at a Twins playoff game. But what happened was...
Hey, can you sit down?
Exactly. I got told to sit down.
I paid good money for this seat.
And that's...
Then get up.
That's such the lazy attitude Minnesota fans have. They sit. And then when it's convenient... or at just any point, they chant the opposition's goaltender's name.
I kind of feel like you need to edit in the Louis C.K. routine here about sitting down and how great it actually is to sit down.
You've got that ability.
The first period of Game 1, when you chant Allen, at Jake Allen, who went on to make 50-some saves, to beat you in game one. And then the series, that's not a good look.
We're cerebral fans, Giles. Cerebral. It was a Professor X thing.
Minnesota fans are just way smarter. They love to they sit there and they're thinking about the game intelligently. That's what they're doing. Okay, good. I don't believe you at all.
And by intelligently, we mean 8 Jack Daniels drinks in. Intelligently.
Yeah, and that's kind of been my issue with Wild fans, and I've been probably more critical of Wild fans than your average blogger, but we claim like we're this upper echelon of hockey intelligence because we grew up with the game in our blood, which is, I think, true. But then like this weird groupthink stupidity like takes over the crowd at the XL, and it's just like they start chanting Allen. They don't know how many syllables are in the word wild. Like and then just all of these different things where it's like
subtle
and then all of these like different if there's that much intelligence about the game, you shouldn't be absolutely losing your mind over an offsides call. That was clearly offsides. Like that kind of stuff. If that's the fans that we want to be, we shouldn't be doing the same exact...
If that's the fans we want to be, we should be Avalanche fans.
But that's just...
It's not a bear! It's odd because there's more... Fans are more intelligent at the high school, the state high school hockey tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
Absolutely.
We're going to get another beer here in just a second. Play some intermission music right now.
The 10-minute intermission for Monty Python.
I'll take another one of these Stone, please.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
I was yelling, I need a beer. And now I feel bad because the waitress came right over. Yikes. Well, her tip just doubled.
I'm just going to give her my check card. So, have at it.
I don't know where I'm going now. All right.
On this show?
Was it ever railed?
That never happened.
Was it ever railed?
So yeah, like I said, it was a while since we last recorded, so I guess I should have led with this, but I'm not a good host by any means. So did you fellas enjoy your Memorial Day holiday?
Too much.
Same.
Taylor was actually at my house working his $double signs off, pulling sod so that we could plant wildflowers because that's what men do on Memorial Day.
Bryan
power.
provided beer and meat, and so all was well. I worked a lot. It was a very active weekend. A lot of beer, a lot of work, a lot of beer, some more beer, but it was good. Yeah, Memorial Day weekend, and then. Yeah, this whole week, it flew by, but yeah, it was a good time.
I can relate to the beer part of the weekend. I was at the Twins game Sunday and Monday where the bullpen gave up about 50 runs combined in both games.
Oh my God.
So naturally, I can't remember them doing that because... your instinct is to just drink beer.
It's not like we saw that coming. I know Brian's not a huge baseball guy, which is fine. I know you guys follow. I mean,
Ben follows it way more than I do now.
I don't know if I would say that, but yeah, sure. Or
it was just, I mean, the bullpen, you look at how it's constructed right now, and not to make this into a baseball podcast, but because it's not.
Sure.
But it is the off-season for hockey.
Right.
For the Wild, not for the two best
Hockey's
teams.
Over. It ended weeks ago.
But the teams on the TV, and they play and they score goals.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, the bullpen's a train wreck. It has been, and it's been a weak point for years, particularly this year. And I'm not going to suggest that they had any chance to win the division because I think Cleveland's going to come around.
Yeah. You know what they need? Steve Ott.
That's what we call a callback. Professionally executed right there. Callback.
I just want to see Steve Ott cross-check somebody with a baseball bat just to kind of bring that full circle. But
that sounds like one of those old school ESPN Sports Center commercials.
There was a great one. God, I remember there was one where it was one of those why hockey is better kind of commercials, and that actually, there was two of them that I remember distinctly. One where a guy is on the putting green, and he's about to sink about a 6-footer, and a guy comes flying out of nowhere and cross-checks him with a putter.
Yes.
That was pretty fantastic. Another one where it was a basketball game, this guy throws up like a buzzer-beating three-pointer, and it follows the trail of the basketball. Then you see it being kicked away by a padded skate, and then you've got the goalie sitting on top of the backboard with like his feet dangling in front of the basket, which was also tremendous. I believe those were ESPN. I'm pretty sure they were. It was back when they actually were
back
aware
before
of the
they
sport of
fired
hockey.
everyone who knows how to spell the word hockey.
Before they
Everyone.
they gutted their entire hockey coverage, and now their hockey account sends out soccer tweets.
Meanwhile, Stephen A. Smith remains employed.
Quite frankly.
Gainfully employed. It's preposterous. So, yeah, those were tremendous. But getting back to the bullpen thing, I think it'll get better. I think the new regime, pitching is kind of their thing. And I think the best bullpens are built out of failed starting prospects. And they're starting
They've
to accrue
got plenty
that.
of those,
Oh, no,
Kyle Gibson.
Well, that's exactly it. And so they're getting to that point where they're getting those guys like Glenn Perkins is a failed starter. It turned into an all-star closer. That's one guy, and he's run into, obviously, a lot of injury trouble. But I think they're on that track where the team is actually going to be good enough at some point where the bullpen will catch up.
Basically, we should enjoy this season for what we're hoping is sort of a Joe Mauer renaissance and a Miguel Sano, how far can he hit the ball contest.
It's not a Joe Mauer renaissance. He didn't hit 40 home runs. That's not what he's being paid
Not a
to do.
dinger?
No. How dare you say that Joe Mauer is anywhere resembling
I am
good?
a complete Joe Mauer apologist. I absolutely love that man. So, hey, that came off wrong. Never mind. Edit that out, please.
I'll say it for Giles. Well, I mean, one of us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the question was, how was your Memorial Day? And somehow we got into the Twins bullpen.
That's Taylor. Taylor's going to derail it every time.
Every time.
I was going to say probably more Ben, but so Ben, how was your Memorial Day weekend? Because you had quite the extravagant week because it was your lady friend's birthday, so you were all over the Facebook.
Yeah.
The facey space.
Yeah, so we started like Thursday night into the weekend. We went to Travail, which was very, very good, very unique experience. Enjoyed that a lot. It was not a whole lot over on Sunday. Went to the Saints game. That was a lot of fun. That's always a lot of fun. They did a thing where with the Saints game, which is great, entertainment, whatever. After the game, immediately they pulled like a dozen food trucks onto the field, basically parked them on the warning track, and it was just a free for all. And that was actually a lot of fun. We got a couple of items from food trucks and then a fireworks show. So that was a tremendous Sunday evening.
The Saints get it. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, any you're talking about sports in general. I mean, they've never taken themselves seriously. It's not, obviously, the talent level is not a major league talent. Not that I'm breaking it.
Hey, they had Darryl Strawberry once.
That was awesome.
That's some real talent right there.
And then you got to reenact sort of the Simpsons that you get to chant at him, the Darryl chant. So that was fantastic.
You're Darryl Strawberry.
Darryl, 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 Darryl. Children, that's not very nice.
I know who I'm talking to here, so
You're in good company. No, I was gonna say, like, I wish like professional teams took more of like a minor league team approach to when it comes to things, because like you talk about like the Saints, they get it, like, and you think about other minor league teams that you kind of follow, and you're just like, yeah, they also get it. And then you look at professional teams, and then you're just like, they don't get it.
How do you not get it?
Right.
They just don't understand. I mean, it's and this is not just the teams, it's fans, it's sort of the commentators, it's the professionals. It's entertainment.
Right.
This is not life. It's it's a great diversion,
right,
and it's fantastic, and it's worth following. And there's all this, but it's not It's just not. It's not life. It's not that. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, have fun with it.
Yeah, and I think that's minor league teams do such a great job of it because they have to. The St. Paul Saints, I mean, they're 15, 20 minutes across town from a Major League Baseball club. They have to do things like that in order to survive. And I think it's just a general laziness on Major League teams, essentially, to not do those kind of things, to not worry as much because they're the top league and people are going to go see them because they're the top league. And especially, I think especially we see that with a particular hockey league that isn't particularly great at promoting itself.
Well, I was going to say, you talk about minor league teams that get it. Like, the Saints have gotten it for a long time, and I will reference that with the name of the pig that they have as their mascot every year. With the year being Alternative Fats. Which
it's a good name.
Is well done.
Good name.
As always. You think they can't top the previous year, and somehow they do. So about the National Hockey League and how they do things well. Crickets.
They almost can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
Because the sport, take the league out of it. Take any sort of organization out of it. The sport itself, fantastic. The best. It's a very big league sport.
Well played.
But no, but the NHL almost can't get out of its own way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's unfortunate because, there are those of us that sort of just, again, from a broad perspective, enjoy the sport and want to sort of see the NHL be that lead as far as entertainment and sort of innovation and sort of capturing that greater market share. And it just can't. I don't know. And can you say, is it Bettman? Probably. Is it sort of an ingrained culture? Could be.
Yeah.
It's probably Bettman. I know I've got people in agreement here. But it's just too bad because you look at it.
Commissioner Grew.
I have nothing more to add.
No, I think you're right. I think not only did the NHL not do a good job of promoting its product, it feels like at times they actively try to suppress their own product. Like, that's how bad at it they actually are. Like, they don't even do a good job of like, hey, this is hockey. It's really cool. You should check it out. They do things where it's like, we know, like, the fans got behind the whole John Scott thing. We're going to, force a trade so he can't participate. And then, we talked at length before the podcast about PK Subban, and regardless of, what he does on the ice or whatever other players think of him, a la John Scott, off the ice, obviously tremendous. At the very least, he's the most interesting player in the NHL. What you think about him, he's still an incredibly, incredibly marketable guy. And they just, instead we see Gatorade commercials with Patrick Kane. And it's just like, who's running the ship here? Like, and I get the NHL probably doesn't have anything to do with Gatorade approaching Patrick Kane. That's fine, but you still don't see a lot of the players that promoted that should be. I mean, when have you ever seen a commercial with Erik Karlsson? When have you seen a commercial with even Steven Stamkos, John Tavares, guys like that? No, we get Patrick Kane, we get maybe Sidney Crosby on occasion, and that's just kind of the reason why NBCSN is as ridiculed as they are.
I feel like Giles has something to say.
Oh, Patrick, she said no. From the musical talents of Dan Mick.
What were we talking about again?
I just don't get it. Why? Quit shoving Patrick Kane down my throat. Like, you have... Sorry. That was really bad.
Phrasing.
I really did not mean to do that. And
that's what she said?
Brian had about 500 jokes run through his head, and I just watched him try and process what he needed to go with.
The Giles and Goalie podcast is not responsible for anything that Bryan Reynolds says.
You have like 20 marketable players, way better than Patrick Kane, but yet you choose to continue with Patrick Kane.
It moves the needle in Chicago, right? Yep. Chicago's a big city.
Don't ever tell any of those fans that Patrick Kane has done wrong at any point. He is a saint.
I have. It's fun.
He's also one of the NHL's top 100 players, in case you didn't know, because he has 3 Stanley Cups.
He won them by himself. And to be fair, when he first came up, I was a fan because it was a little more, at least from what we knew, it was a little more innocent. You know, he likes to drink and he's a good hockey player. And then all of a sudden, the information started to come out, and it's like, and then.
Well, pictures of him getting hammered in Madison is one thing. That makes you that makes you relatable.
Exactly.
Assaulting a cabbie doesn't make you relatable. It makes you an S-stain.
A bad word I can't say on this podcast.
And then, the whole allegations beyond that. Yeah, exactly. It just, and whatever happened with that, whatever happened, that sounded like that was a completely different situation altogether with how that whole allegation thing went down. But still, it doesn't change, the perception of him, and probably correctly so, that he's a complete S-stain, and that's just kind of who he is. And then for them to keep on, pimping him over and over as this guy that they're building their image around, it's just like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. And so I think they should market their stars, but at the same time, when that's the star you're marketing, you're probably better off just marketing the fact that hockey is a really fun game to watch, and we should kind of maybe focus on that.
This is a really esoteric sort of podcast. We've hit on a lot of topics.
That's kind of what we had in mind. That's why we didn't have any...
Which is good.
We didn't have anything actually planned.
Are there any Avalanche fans that listen to this? We may need to define the word esoteric.
Oh,
sorry. My bad.
No.
Okay.
If there were, they would have stopped listening after last week's clip show episode, where I defined why I don't care for that particular franchise. In case you didn't know, there was a clip show last week.
Go listen. Downloadable on iTunes.
Hashtag promotion.
Shameless.
So, you guys don't necessarily follow hockey as closely as you maybe once did, so are there any scathing questions that you have for us as hashtag experts?
Ooh, the expert hashtag. Oh boy. I'm going to put you on the record with the question I asked you earlier. Ben answered it fairly succinctly. Maybe you can define it a little clearer. So you have players who have a no-trade clause, not a no-movement clause. You're adding a team to the league in Las Vegas. Do the no-trade clauses apply to the new team if it is team-specific? So there may or may not be a player on the current Minnesota Wild roster that fans want to get rid of who has a no-trade clause that is a modified no-trade clause with certain teams he cannot be traded to. Does the Las Vegas Golden Knights apply or not?
And I'm always curious as to when they have to submit these lists, because there could be so many different points in a calendar year when they have to say, okay, here's the list of teams I don't want to be traded to. So if it's saying,
does anyone think that Edmonton is not on anybody's list? Like every player that has a modified no trade, they're like Edmonton. Don't trade me to Edmonton.
I don't know if you saw this,
Canadian Siberia.
Somebody did a poll of so many players in the league, and one of the questions was what teams are popular among no trade lists, and Edmonton was at the top of said list.
What?
Which
I'm shocked.
Puts a good.
I'm absolutely
gives you
shocked.
A smile because it's Edmonton. Nobody wants to go there.
I'm signing up for the concourse season tickets next year, by the way.
So you're going to take a leak in the sink?
Yeah, I just want to be there in the building and watch it on TV.
But now he'll have a ticket.
I'm going to tell you a story about Edmonton. I wanted to share it with you earlier, but the conversation just kept going, so I didn't get to it, but it is more relating to Connor McDavid and the draft lottery that year. So I was at this bar, which we're at now, and, I'm a relatively regular customer here. So I know most of the people here pretty well. So I was sitting at the bar watching the draft lottery on the TV, and I think Edmonton had like the third or fourth highest odds to win the lottery that year. Something like that. And, you see Edmonton get skipped, so meaning they're in the top, 3. Uh-oh. So you get to 3, Edmonton's not there, so they're in the last 2. And it was, Edmonton and Buffalo? That's right? So I'm sitting there going, please, God, Buffalo. And I'm quite many drinks in at this point. Like, it was a Saturday, so, naturally, whatever. So you see, because they go from 3 and then they just show you number 1. They go right to 1, they open the card, and they showed Edmonton. And without even thinking, in the middle of this bar, I yelled, "F*** me." And I yelled it so loudly that the bartender came over and said, "Giles, I've never had to yell at you before, but please don't do that again." So that's the only time here that I've ever been yelled at about anything, which is kind of incredible.
That's about to change.
Right. But there's my Edmonton Connor McDavid story.
Tremendous. I forget what we were talking about before that.
The Golden Knights.
Oh, right, yeah. So, yeah, I think, and I've got the same question as Giles, where I believe players have to submit their no-trade clauses before the seasons that they take effect. I'm not positive. And if I'm not mistaken, the player we're talking about, I believe his list goes from 10 to 20 this offseason, but I don't know when that exact point of time is. So he could, theoretically, have submitted a list already at the end of the season with the Golden Knights on it, but I don't think that's the case. I think they would submit that list. It would make sense either July 1st or before the season. One of those two dates would make the most sense. So I would think that there's no way they could possibly be on that list at this point.
Right.
But as I mentioned to you earlier, and when we've talked about this podcast, to get rid of Jason Pominville, you're going to have to attach a hell of a player to it.
Right.
You're going to have to get rid of, a guy like, Alex Tuck, a guy like, hopefully not Luke Cunnin, but a player like that's pretty good to dump off 2 years on a contract of Pominville, where I'm not going to say that Pominville is living up to his contract, but I think he's still not.
What's he got, a year left?
Two. I wouldn't call him a bad player still at this point. Does he score a lot anymore? No, he doesn't. His shooting percentage is brutal. But he does a lot of other things well enough to where I can see keeping him on the team, even though you've got that tremendous cap hit, just because it would cost you so much in talent to get rid of him. And also you have Koivu coming off the books after this season, so that helps a little bit too. What kind of discount we'll get on his contract remains to be seen. But I don't know. It was brought up where Fletcher seems relatively motivated to get rid of Pominville, but my concern is how much you'd have to attach to him to get rid of him.
And that makes sense. Now, Fletcher has always seemed to be a guy who is focused on the future.
Yeah.
So is he willing to sit through 2 more years of Jason Pominville to not have to give up a prospect?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the cupboard isn't thin. I think they've got a decent crop of prospects, a decent 4 or 5 guys, but obviously not very many draft picks this year. And, draft picks missing from next.
I mean, just couple him with Scandella and trade him for Ovechkin, right?
It's that easy.
I mean,
I'm sure that's on HF boards somewhere.
Yeah.
We haven't done that yet?
So
you got to figure Washington's like, hell yeah, Scandella.
Right.
That's the guy.
Well, we need to shore up our defense. So,
I mean, Scandella is quite an upgrade over Brooks Orpik, to be honest. Also, as soon as I gave the mic back to Ben, I realized I never actually answered your question. I weirdly hit a tangent.
By the way, Giles 2020.
Yeah. So, no, Ben picked me up on that because he recognized that I'd never actually answered the question, and I was more eager to share my Edmonton story for podcast purposes.
And who doesn't like a good Edmonton story? I mean, come on.
That's true. Actually, I think I found the only two tolerable Edmonton fans at the draft when it was here in 2011. Because they sat right in front of me in the first round, and we were just kind of, BSing for the night, and they weren't terrible to converse with. They seemed to recognize that their team was bad, and they weren't full of themselves like, oh, we've won 5 Stanley Cups. You ever heard of a guy named Gretzky? Yeah, he's pretty good.
I really enjoyed his tenure with the Coyotes. Really nailed that. You know what he should have done in Phoenix? Probably should have hired Steve Ott as a coach.
I was going to ask if you played with Steve Ott in St. Louis, but that's different eras, so.
I've forgotten so many times that Wayne Gretzky was a coach of the Coyotes. And then he weirdly got shoved out in the NHL takeover of the Coyotes before they sold them. And then he was angry at Gary Bettman for the longest period of time. Which, same, yeah. Wayne, we've all been there. Do you guys have anything else?
Do I get to ask a question?
Yeah, fire away.
God, no.
I
might answer it.
It's an unanswerable question, really. We can sort of speculate if we want.
Good, because I'm not in the market of answering questions
No. You guys are quote experts. I guess my big thing is, for a while now, fans have thought that we've sort of had, the Wild have had the talent to get to and possibly win the Stanley Cup. They're convinced, with the Breezy Suter and sort of the younger pieces that have been brought on that, this is a team that could, make a decent run. And you look at some of the regular season performance outside of March, and they've done very well, but they've obviously fallen on their face in the playoffs.
It's all Mikko's fault.
Well, you weren't supposed to give him the answer.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
You weren't supposed to tell him that. Outside of that, if you were to sort of exempt Mikko from this equation, what do you see as? I mean, if you're playing the Chuck Fletcher role, as I'm sure you've done many times on this podcast, in the next, I'm going to give you 5 years. So that's an eternity in sports. 5 years. How do you see this team even challenging for the Stanley Cup?
Well, for me, Barrios' pitch count is #nice, by the way.
Well played.
I mean, the future, to me, is kind of centered around the Russian prospect, Kaprizov. 'Cause he seems to be that guy who can do great things that this team has
anyone checked his hip flexors before he comes over?
I was going to say, he's going to have chronic, groin injuries, isn't he? I mean, if you can get him to come over here, he is going to be one that, you're probably going to center your team around. But again, the question is he coming over here? That's why he was there in the 5th round when they took him, because you don't know. That's always the roll of the dice you take. And you hope that with the KHL crumbling day by day and all these players who we thought were in Russia forever are now coming over, that's kind of an indicator that, okay, he's probably going to come over next year, and you can build your team around him. And if not, then, well, I would start updating my job resume.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think Kaprizov is very exciting, and even though we learned from apparently from Hockey Buzz that he signed a long-term contract in Russia. Hold on.
Give him the mic.
No. As my friend Graham pointed out, we found the at Hockey Insider of the KHL with that take.
Right. So, but I guess to answer your question more, as far as questioning the talent on this team, the playoffs are so weird in that, look at Nashville. I don't think at all that Nashville is a more talented team than the Wild. Maybe incrementally at best. I don't know if they are. I think that they match up pretty well in the regular season. They match up pretty well. They've always matched up pretty well. I think that it takes a good run, and Pekka Rinne obviously had a fantastic run in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs. The wheels have definitely come off for him in this series, but I think that you've got enough talent on this team to where you could make a run. Are they going to? Who knows? That's the problem, where you don't have a Crosby, you don't have an Ovechkin, you don't have McDavid, you don't have that kind of guy where you can guarantee, they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs at some point. But I think they have enough talent where they could, if that makes sense. So
we're going to make Minnesota fans wait for a possible run.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're wrong, but
well, what's the
as someone who was born and raised in the great city of St. Paul, we're a little emotionally damaged by our sports teams. We're a little scarred. No! That's why, and I'll be honest with you. That's why I've turned to other pursuits instead of sports, because it's brutal. I mean, 1991 was the last sort of, and apologies to Minnesota Lynx fans. I'm not being disrespectful, but when we're talking about the big four,
right,
football, hockey, baseball, and basketball, that was, 91 was the last major championship, and and this year, and I would say probably within the last couple of years, the Wild have been sort of that outlet of hope, where it's like, well, the Vikings don't have their stuff together. I censored myself there, sorry. The Twins are an absolute, dumpster fire. The Timberwolves barely exist.
Right.
At least the Wild, they're going to make the playoffs, and they've got a good veteran core, and they've got these young guys, and God, and Coyle and Dumba, and and it's and now we're sort of based. Well, if they get on a run, maybe this can possibly happen. I'm not saying you're wrong, by any means, but it's just like, it's a very tenuous.
Oh, I totally understand the frustration with that whole idea, where it's like, well, you just have to wait for this team to go on a run, because people want to do something. They want some kind of action. They want, effort put forth to make this team win more consistently, especially in the playoffs.
The Chicago Blackhawks went on 3 runs. I'm just saying.
Right, and where'd they end up this year? Swept. So it's that kind of thing where it's like it's like you don't know. The NHL playoffs are such a crapshoot. It's really tough to say, like, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and guaranteeing a deep run in the playoffs. And so you are just kind of, standing there holding your member, waiting for them to do something.
You are, not me.
I do it all the time anyway.
I do no such thing.
But that's just kind of where we're at, and without a franchise player, that's just kind of where it seems. So I guess to turn it on both of you, because this has been the hot topic of discussion that Giles and I have dealt with. What are you guys doing to fix the Wild? What are you doing to change the Wild to make the Wild better? Well, yeah.
I stopped going to games.
I don't have
appreciate
cable.
That
I gave up my blog. I stopped going. I stopped paying attention. Is that not working?
No, it's not working. Oh. I don't know if you've heard, but
I apologize.
Okay.
I cut the cord. I go to about 1 game a year. I can't. I'm a horrible fan.
Sure.
I love hockey and I love the Wild.
Also a horrible person.
No, that too.
Just in general.
That's sort of implied if I'm a terrible hockey fan, if you're listening to this podcast.
True,
so.
yeah.
No, I don't know. I'm doing nothing because I really don't think that the average fan has sway on how the team performs. And I get, out of all the other sports, it's very much sort of the probability and sort of the likelihood of a team being able to construct a Stanley Cup winning team or a championship team is unlikely. I mean, you can football's got the salary cap, hockey's got the salary cap, baseball you can essentially more or less buy your way to a championship.
Kind of.
Basketball,
you basically need one of the best.
If you drafted Steph Curry, or LeBron James, you're good to go.
Yeah.
No, I get that hockey is sort of a hot goalie sort of streaky situation, but that's not what anybody wants to hear. They want sort of
course not.
We're the state of hockey. We are somehow owed a championship. No, I'm just being.
No, you're right. You're 100% right.
They stole the North Stars from us.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to get into that topic because I don't think
Norm Green sucks
a lot.
Minnesota forever. Norm, you suck.
Yes.
No, I'm with you.
I don't know that my question actually has an answer. That's the thing. It's very, we can talk about specific trades and contracts, and this guy will leave here, and then we've got this draft pick here, and if this guy signs, and it's very. But I mean, I almost think you look at any sort of team and any of their fan bases, and sort of, okay, great. Let's say Nashville wins this year, but then they've got XYZ leaving next year, so they're going to be sort of. Middle of the road, players next year, and maybe nobody leaves, but maybe they don't even make the playoffs next year. There's a lot of sort of hard to pin down factors with hockey that basically maybe I'm answering my own question, which I tend to do sometimes, but.
Well, and that's kind of our thing, and that's what Giles and I and other bloggers have struggled with is people come to you. And God forbid you write an article with a suggestion, because then they'll come to you and be like, nope, it's Koivu. It's Koivu, and it's Ryan Suter, and it's just like,
I'm glad it took you that long to say it was Koivu. Thank you.
It's not always that easy. Like, that's just it. And to your point about Nashville, where it's like, they could not lose any players, come back next season, and like you said, miss the playoffs. That's or get in the playoffs and get swept in the first round. That's just kind of how those things work. And so that's the really frustrating part is that there isn't a good answer, and people really don't want to hear that, as you said.
Chicago probably will win the championship next year. You know why? God hates us.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Or if you don't believe in God, it's just Chicago. And
how can you not believe in God? I'm sitting right in front of you.
That might be a good place to end. I'm not going to tell you how to do your podcast.
He is the voice of God as far as this podcast is concerned.
Before we end, I have one more question.
Sure.
Specifically, maybe for Giles.
Okay.
So, with the Wild taking the tact of Tony Stark and always building towards the one threat, right? So we built a team to beat the Blackhawks. And then you didn't get the Blackhawks.
Not even close.
As if round 2 didn't exist.
Right.
We just have to beat the Blackhawks. So my question for you is simple. What moves do you make this offseason to beat Jake Allen?
Don't say Brian doesn't do show prep. He does show prep.
I'm going to tangent with a story about St. Louis. No, I'm just kidding. And it feels like we're on off-season number 3. Oh, God, he's got 2 microphones now. No, it feels like we're on off-season number 3 of the Wild need a scorer, like a true scorer. And that's a lot easier
just go get one,
done.
right?
Yeah.
Just go trade for one. They're out there. Ovechkin's on the market.
Yeah, there you go. 32-year-old Alex Ovechkin is available for $10 million a year. Just go get him. There's just a lot of ifs floating around out there. Like, Jonathan Drouin apparently could be out there. He could be said scorer, but he's young, so there's an if. It comes down to, okay, what do your scouts think? And it's more of, hopefully you draft a scorer, and that comes to having first-round draft picks, or you strike gold in the 5th with, Kaprizov. But you just hope you can find that game breaker that can he can beat a hot goalie because he's just got said skills. But again, you have to find it. That's the problem. They don't grow on trees. And that's probably been the biggest problem the Wild have had, is they've never drafted high enough to find one of those pure game breakers. But that's what I got. I tried to answer this time. I didn't jump around it.
And I think you can find, and there's been a lot said about finding those scorers elsewhere besides in a top 3 pick, which is possible. I mean, Vladimir Tarasenko was what, like the 21st overall pick, whatever. But for every one of him that's drafted, there's, 5, especially as far as Russians are concerned, there's guys that flame out. So, yeah, it isn't that easy. It isn't that easy as just scooping up a game-changing player, which the Wild lack desperately, that is going to consistently score, because that seems to kind of be the problem for the Wild in the playoffs. Because, as much as they're spending on Zach Parise, he's not that guy. He's not. He's certainly, we've mentioned before a million times, tons of respect for him and how he plays the game, and he's a very good hockey player. Nobody's going to say otherwise, with any kind of level of sanity, but he's not that kind of game-breaking scorer.
He was also like one of, maybe 3 Wild players where I was actually like, he took it up a notch in the playoffs. Like, that's a fair criticism I have of the Wild in the playoffs. As much as they outplayed the Blues, like, Zach Parise took his game and then he just took it to a whole nother level in that 5-game series.
That's his MO. That is Zach Parise. He plays playoff hockey in the regular season,
right?
And he plays some sort of other, otherworldly. He gives the effort, but no, he's not going to be that sort of high-end goal scoring. And anybody who thought he was going to be, sorry. You never understood his game.
Yeah,
he's a very talented all-around player. He's going to give you, no matter what, I don't care what injury, he's going to give you everything he has, but he's not going to
whatever injury, so his back. It's always the back.
Yeah, and that's kind of another thing with him too. It's
because he's carrying the team.
You've got to find some replacement for his scoring, because it's in the decline, and it's not like it's going to turn around swiftly with a back injury. So.
It's not. God, this whole line of questioning is kind of bumming me out. It's
that's what we do here. We suck the fun right out of things.
Good job. I don't know. I don't know if I have much to contribute. I don't know. I'm clearly. I've had a couple beers and I'm at a loss for words, so I'm going to defer to the experts.
Well, we don't have to talk 100% hockey on this, because we might have hit a wall with that. What beer are you currently enjoying right now?
I've got a Stone. It's an aptly named beer. It's a Stone Delicious IPA. For those of you who don't know, Stone is out of Southern California, Escondido near San Diego, and they do anything with hops. They do very well. Pretty fantastic. Yes, that's all I can say. So Giles got a new beer.
So just for the record, Taylor passed, and I'm probably going to say this incorrectly, the Cicerone test. So he is an actual certified beer snob.
Oh, okay.
I don't tell people that because then they expect me to know everything about everything. I
How do
don't.
you pass this test? Where do you take this test?
Tomorrow morning, all you need to do is be really hungover. No.
All you need is a blood alcohol content of at least 0.4.
Well,
can we get there?
So I'm Tiger Woods. Oh, wait. Nope.
Oh.
He didn't have alcohol on his... Guys, come on.
Too soon.
Too soon. Hashtag too soon.
Are we talking about... Is this a beer podcast now? Because I could probably... I could ramble quite a bit.
I genuinely have forgotten what beer I've ordered. So I can't even tell you what this beer is.
Giles, there's a reason we get along. I mean...
What kind of beer would you like? Yes.
I think it's an IPA, but there's quite a few on this list, so...
It's a hoppy list for sure.
Ben hasn't had a beer in about an hour and a half.
Actually, I'm really impressed. He finished the beer. Usually when we do this, I blow through about 3 or 4, and he'll get through a half of one, which is just a Northeast, which is probably what he had today. You had a premium. You're moving up in the world.
You know what? For sort of if you're going to go for the sort of cheaper beer route, I 100%.
Best cheap beer in America.
It's Grain Belt.
Grain Belt Premium.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
100%.
Rated by beer sites.
Well, sure. Fake news, but yeah, all right. No, it's
rated by me. Damn it.
Oh, you didn't say that.
Rated by Covfefe.
Covfefe.
The Covfefe scale.
That needs to be a scale for something. I don't care what, just anything.
Here you go. Episode whatever the hell this is. Covfefe scale.
It rates Minnesota biases for locally made products. No, I'm a big Grain Belt guy. There are other, I would say, superior beers, but for your dollar, go Grain Belt Premium.
Always a staple of my home.
Anything with hops and yeast is a staple in your house, from what I hear. So,
yeah. Anything that has alcohol in it is
grain
a staple of my
and
home.
yeast in general. Just grain. Add some yeast, maybe a little sugar.
Actually, it's weird. This weekend there was hams in my fridge, not premium.
nothing wrong with hams. That's a little farther down the cheapness scale, but hams will suffice.
What?
Brian looks confused.
So I'll share this story from last weekend, Memorial Day weekend. It was Sunday, and my roommate and we had a friend over. We realized that we were out of beer, and it was Sunday. So
in the great state of Minnesota.
Yep. So what was our instinct? Let's go to Hudson.
Let's go to Hudson and buy hams? That was your instinct? You need new instincts.
That could be the name for the podcast, too. You need new instincts.
I mean, that's also a fair criticism of this podcast. But no, so we got out there and we all just decided to buy like a nice bottle of liquor each.
Fair point.
So we all bought a craft whatever we're drinking. So I bought Lake Superior vodka, which is a pretty good vodka.
What was your mixer?
Nothing.
Well played.
Straight with just an ice cube.
Hell yeah.
His mixer was water. Yeah. Frozen.
So we each got, whatever for liquor, and then we're like, let's just get like a cheap beer. So then it became Hams, which was the beer of choice. So that's why there was Hams in my fridge. That's why I shared that.
Hams is it's still good. I know Brian questions sort of Brian's questioning the whole Cicerone certification.
I am now, turning you into whoever gave you a certification for beer. I think Hams, their tagline is, "Have you had diarrhea today?"
No one said you had to drink the whole case.
I was going to say, Hams was good for last night when I was playing the Mario Kart drinking game with some friends. Which is, you're playing the Mario Kart 64, and you have to finish your drink before you cross the finish line.
I'm fairly certain that Brian thinks that I have some sort of Scrooge McDuck sort of scenario where I'm swimming in really rare beer, and it's all stouts and barley wines and this. No, I can drink the cheap stuff too. I mean, I'm not opposed to that whatsoever.
I'm still just confused as to why you would call Hams good. I mean, they're not here.
Good
Taylor.
enough. Good enough.
No one is here.
Good enough.
From the company. I don't
right
even,
behind
who
me.
even makes Hams?
Right
Hams
behind me.
is out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is okay to, take a dump on them because it's Wisconsin.
So it is still the land of sky blue waters. However, it's awful. It's awful beer.
I find your snobbery appalling.
I give
really.
you your choice. Okay?
Go on.
What's the game? Mary.
Oh, yes.
Mary
F.
Mary F. Kill.
Kill. Okay, you have Stroh's,
Yep.
Schmidt, and the Hams. Go.
Okay. I would marry Hams. That's an easy one. I would kill Schmidt, and what was the other one?
F.
Stroh's, Hams, and Schmidt.
Oh, so I would F Stroh's. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah. That was appropriate for the podcast. We're on topic.
Whew. That's quite the Mary F. Kill scenario right there. Actually, now that I think about it, I would probably have to agree with what he just said.
I think I might just start with killing, me and just get out of it.
You didn't give me that option.
Think outside the box, Taylor. Come on.
That's what he does. He thinks outside the box. Most times.
So, who's still listening right now? By the way, if you are, thank you. Because this is just beer-driven rambling.
That's what I do at the end of every podcast. I'm like, well, if you're still listening, I'm not sure why.
We're just down to the one Avalanche fan in Denver who hates Giles so much.
I hate him so much
that he's going to listen to every word for the manifesto.
Actually, if there is one Avalanche fan who listens to every word I say, it's going to be the crying girl. Just so she
and
can
if you're
have
listening,
more on
call us, please.
Yeah, call him.
That's Giles White. What is White Rhino, White Unicorn, whatever? That's Giles' unattainable interview right there to get in touch with the crying girl.
He is Captain Ahab. She is a whale?
Right.
What?
Exactly. Something
Are
to
we
that
allowed
effect.
to say dick on the podcast if it's Moby Dick?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. We might have mentioned it already. Just talking about holding members and all that jazz. So, but actually, I did have one topic that I wanted to bring up that Taylor will appreciate. It's not at all what you're thinking, but no. It's not anything.
We're still recording.
Giles has a topic he would like to
Giles has
discuss.
something too.
I was a topic that one topic I hadn't planned to.
Ken Griffey Jr.?
No, I was going to ask Taylor if he had seen any episodes of Chug yet.
Well, I own the DVD, and
so
I supported the Kickstarter, so yes,
did I.
but I've actually rewatched it.
It just got to Netflix.
That was part of my Memorial Day weekend festivities. Monday, my wife's like, "Oh, let's throw this on." I'm like, "Well, I hadn't planned on drinking today, but I guess you can't watch the show without."
I never really plan on drinking. I think that's not planning to breathe oxygen. I just do it.
Fair enough. I was trying to be not hungover at work on Tuesday, but that failed. So no. I'm a definite Zane Lamprey fanboy, unapologetically. Whether it be Three Sheets, whether it be Chug, whether it be
Made Easy.
Yeah, any of his shows. I mean, he travels around the world examining and living drinking cultures. Like, where's the flaw there? Like, there's no issue. And I think Chug was sort of a revival of Three Sheets. Yeah, it was great. I haven't
actually seen it yet, so I'm really excited.
Oh, you haven't seen it at all?
No, I supported the Kickstarter result, but I didn't get the DVD, so I'm actually really excited to.
You're so cheap. Like,
I know. I think at the time, gosh, it was like what, 5 years ago or something?
Yeah,
3-4 years ago.
4 years ago.
I was not in a financial place to be like it was fiscally irresponsible for me to buy a T-shirt.
So we found out about, my wife and I found out about him through watching another. This is like sort of a Hulu thing. We'd watched another show and it's like, if you like this, you'll like Three Sheets. And we're like,
sure.
I'm like, a show about drinking, you say. Go on.
Indeed.
And so we started watching that. I mean, we were immediately hooked. Like, my wife is an absolute fan as well. And then, we just sort of, and then through social media, you follow the guy and and I mean, it's a damn shame that he doesn't have a show. It's insane.
It's
that
crazy.
He doesn't have a show because he's great at what he does. I think there's an audience there.
Yeah.
And Chug is fantastically shot. It's not. People sort of worry about when you go into other cultures, are they exploiting? No, he's like, if this is how you do it, I'm gonna fit into this. I'm gonna do this. Like, it's very respectful and
good. I'm glad to hear it's much like Three Sheets because
oh my god, it's Three Sheets 2.0 basically.
Which I really like because I saw almost every episode of Three Sheets and they're all fantastic, obviously. So very excited for that.
Zane's my guy. Somebody needs to snap him up and and he needs sort of a lifetime contract to do what he does. And I will say too, have you had he's a rum guy too.
The
he
monkey rum? I have not had monkey rum. How is it?
Dude.
Is it that good?
I'm not kidding. So I'm mainly.
Where can you get that locally, or do you just have
you
to
don't. You don't get that locally. It's mail order. It's mail order. We've gotten a couple of bottles mail order. My wife actually got it for me for a Christmas present.
Nice.
And normally, like, I'm a whiskey guy, bourbon, scotch, here and there. And I like rum. It's sort of a growing thing, but I'm like, I gotta try this.
Right.
And it's a great spice rum. It's super smooth, a little bit of coconut, but not overpowering. It's just a hint of that. Here's the thing. Here's when a spirit is good. You can drink it neat.
Sure.
I drink it neat. Pour it in a glass, drink it neat, and it's legit. And I can't wait till it actually distributes here. Yeah. So.
Well, to keep our eyes out for this. So, Giles, you had some kind of sudden revelation that you needed to get to.
First of all, I just wanted to point out to you that my friend here, the waitress who I saw before the show, that is the bride from the Wedding Winnebago story. I just wanted to share that with you. The one topic I had actually planned for this podcast that I actually thought about before.
We're in like hour 7 right now of the podcast,
that I since forgot about as we record because God forbid that I ever remember anything. But it actually falls into what we're talking about here as, say, hypothetically, you had, you got the Stanley Cup for a day or whatever. And you got to take a drink out of it. What would you put in there to drink with?
All right, I guess Taylor is motioning towards me.
I'm deferring.
All right. I'm going to go with the default answer. I'm going to try to refine as I go here. So we're going to go high-end bourbon. I'm not quite sure what the volume of the Stanley Cup is. Maybe that's some research someone could do for me. How much fits in that bowl exactly? But at this point, I would lean towards a nice Booker's or maybe some double-oaked Woodford Reserve.
Well, immediately when he threw the question to you, I immediately thought Oilers fan tears.
Oilers fan tears? I didn't know that was an option.
Well,
if someone is bottling that,
it could be a cocktail.
I will buy all of it.
I mean, so that could be like, we could be talking Booker's with sort of like a mix of like bitters and Oilers fan tears, So, I mean, cocktails are a possibility as well, especially if you're concerned about volume. So,
how'd I do?
You did.
Okay.
You did good.
Okay. Now we're going to go back to Taylor because he's going to say something like Captain Crunch, the milk that's left over after Captain Crunch.
Well, I'm gonna break some news on this podcast. I actually don't like cereal.
Don't you?
So,
wow.
I mean, if you want to edit me out of this entire podcast, I apologize. I'm not a big cereal guy. No, I wouldn't go Captain Crunch at all. I would be completely ridiculous. Everything that would go in there would be like locally sourced and like this was made by St. Paul, farmer and blah blah blah.
Organic vegan beer.
Big time.
That's what
absolutely.
Taylor's going with.
Oh, absolutely. It would be so locally focused. It would be the One of Us cocktail, and it would just be sort of. It would be whiskey.
You just
made
take
here.
Surly and something from Bent Brew Distillery and mix it all together.
Surly is in Minneapolis. It has to be St. Paul, because God forbid that Minneapolis would enjoy the Stanley Cup as well.
I just want to say, since you mentioned Bent Brew Distillery, that you told me to try that rum, and I was on a big, I don't like rum
I'm
deal,
sorry.
but I took your word for it, so I tried it, and I thought it was great, so I had the bottle.
Wait.
I had a friend last night who said the same thing, and I was like, just take a little sip of this and just try it.
Little sip.
And they're like, this is great.
This clearly wasn't.
It's not the Flamebringer, Taylor. This is Stormbringer rum. So Bent
not
Brew
good
Distillery.
person.
Bent Brew Distillery did. So they age They get a whiskey barrel and they make Dark Father beer, which tastes a lot like Surly Darkness. It's that style. And then they take that barrel and then they put rum in it after. Okay, that's where they get the Stormbringer. After that, they shipped it to a company that I can't remember the name of, but they made sriracha sauce in the barrel. Okay? And then they took Stormbringer and put it back in the bottle to make Flamebringer. And if anybody from Bent Brew Distillery is listening, I apologize. I love all of you. It's kind of bad.
It's sriracha and rum.
It is.
No offense, but that was not a great play.
It's not very good. I'm sorry. I think maybe what they needed to do was filter it because there's like particulates in it and it's overly hot and you can't really taste the rum anymore. It's just hot. So
it's alcoholic sriracha. Think about how that would be a good idea. It's not.
The sriracha sauce that came out of the barrel, magnificent. The rum they put in after,
no,
not so much.
Hideous.
And if anybody needs a bottle, I have two that I'm willing to sell for a nominal fee.
When Bryan is basically willing to part with alcohol for less than cost, you know it sucks. Love you, Bent Brew Distillery.
That's accurate. I mean, I've thought about this because I've had, half the week to think about it, and
he had half the week to think about it and still forgot to bring it up.
Yep.
That's the best part of this.
That's how this podcast goes. No, I thought about what complex drink I would, put in there just to drink out of it, and then really I went simple with it, and I was just like, you know what? If I just had one thing to drink out of it, I would just want to put my favorite beer in there, which is premium. So I would just put premium right in the Stanley Cup. And
I know people there. We can get you some.
So that's literally it. Just premium out of the Stanley Cup would be me.
And from what I've learned, before you hand the mic to Ben, I'm fairly certain he's going to say half of one beer.
I was literally about to transition to him by saying, so Ben, what are you going to milk drinking out of the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, as you guys have noticed, I'm not much of a drinker at all, and so, but I'm sporadically. I don't know. Like I'll have I'll definitely get hammered on an occasion, but I'm very moody with my drinks. I feel like I like to change things up. I'll be heavy beer one night, heavy a certain kind of cocktail the other night, heavy a different kind of cocktail the other night. So I don't have a go-to really. Those that know me non-alcoholically would say probably chocolate milk. I would probably fill the Stanley Cup with that, and that's how I would party. But I think if I have possession of this Stanley Cup, I'm going to want to drink something alcoholic. So I don't know, like a White Russian then, I guess. That would be kind of interesting. Seems like a lot of White Russian for one silver bowl, but
Giles is not pleased.
No, like it's not.
So Giles and I just exchanged a look because when the Capitals exited the Stanley Cup playoffs, I don't even know where the bar is. Maybe in Washington.
This. Yeah.
But they posted a video of how to make the cocktail called Alexander Ovechkin, which is simply a White Russian poured on the bar because there's no cup.
So maybe it is like some weird kind of
that's happiness
back around insult to Ovechkin that I would drink a White Russian from the Stanley Cup. And
yeah, because he's never going to get to. So,
would you bring it to his house? Would you be kind enough to go to his house and go, yeah, you know what? You're never gonna. It's not gonna.
I feel like that's like when you're patronizing.
It's like when you're on a fishing trip and you're on Lake Michigan and you've got all the rods out there and there's one guy who never gets to catch a fish, and so it's your turn and you hook one and you hand it to him here, why don't you reel this one in, big guy?
That would have been me, probably.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought of bringing Ovechkin the cup and saying, here, why don't you have a White Russian, buddy?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think me being the pseudo-foodie that I am, I would want to eat something out of the cup as well, like maybe a nice pasta dish.
Brian,
like Captain Crunch?
Well, I wouldn't call Captain Crunch a pasta dish, per se, but...
I think you need to expand your horizons, Ben.
Yeah, so I would probably do that. I would probably find pasta dish, thorough cleaning, mixed drink of my choice, or beer. I'm very much on board with the premium. I'm a fan. I'm actually a little bit more of a Northeast guy. So
I do have a feeling that if the Stanley Cup is in Ben's presence, he's going to drink more than half a beer.
Yeah. That's a safe assumption.
And just a side note, I think maybe all of you have heard this before, but I have only ever been present in a building one time when the cup was there, and I didn't even know it was there. It was at the draft when we covered the draft with, responsibility. Apparently it was there, and no one told me it was there, so I didn't go see it. When I was a kid, we went to the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame to see the cup. It happened to just be out on Lake Adventure that day, so I've never actually seen it in person.
I have a couple times.
Good for you.
But I was going to say, the draft one, I remember that. Nobody said anything about it, but I remember walking past it going, I didn't know that was here. But it was there. But when the Wild went to the Western Finals in 2003, the Stanley Cup was at the Sears in St. Paul, weirdly, on one afternoon. And it somehow got promoted, and I tell the story because I literally got pulled out of school to go wait in line to get a picture with the Stanley Cup.
Your parents are amazing.
Yep. They understood.
Shout out to Giles' parents right now.
They understood that I would appreciate this later in life.
What's the quote from Twain? Never let your schooling interfere with your education.
True that.
So there was that, and then it was a few years ago at the Let's Play Hockey Expo. It was at the Herb Brooks Foundation booth. So I think it was $20 to see it. So I gave the $20, and I got a picture with it, and then I was just kind of standing there going, okay, what's next? And they're just like, well, if you want to like look at it because nobody else is trying to, like, go right ahead. So I literally was in there for like 20 minutes until the next person came in to get a photo. I was literally just looking at all the names engraved on the Stanley Cup. And it was one of my favorite things ever.
So what you're saying is, in the state of Minnesota, nobody was interested in the highest honor in the alleged state
We're the
sport.
state of hockey, Taylor, not the state of Stanley Cups.
I'm so angry right now. Well, that's true. That blows my mind and also confirms a lot of what I suspected. So that's all I have to say. I don't know.
It was good. I mean, right next to it also was a gold medal from the 1980 Olympic team, but I spent next to no time looking at that at all when the Stanley Cup was right there. So I probably will get shamed for that, but...
You've seen Miracle. You know everything about that. You're fine. You're fine.
Kurt Russell was a great coach.
Again.
All right, well, Ben gave me the signal to probably wrap it up. So when he says that probably means we're done.
God,
when he's out of things to say, yeah. But thanks to Taylor and Bryan for joining us this week. 'Cause I don't know why they did, but they did.
We like beer and we like the sound of our own voice, so here we are.
I'm doing it because Ben has really kick-ass shoes, and I just want you to bleep me one time tonight.
That's fair. As we all looked under the table at Ben's shoes. You can find them on Twitter at BReynoldsMN. Follow at your own risk.
I'm much less controversial. It's my first name, Taylor, TAYLOR_CALLAIS.
Also at Cialis. You can find Taylor at Cialis.
That's my other Twitter account? Come on.
Look for the 2 bathtubs.
Keep seeking the 2 bathtubs. It's all about the 2 bathtubs.
Yeah, occasionally we tweet at them. Usually I just tweet at Reynolds. Good tweet, sir. There's usually one in there that just makes me go, yep, that's it.
I feed Bryan news about how our country is completely falling apart, and then he usually posts something eloquent about it, so follow him.
As I said before the show, I was checking into Facebook only once a week just to post the podcast on my Facebook, but then I became friends with Mr. Reynolds, and now I'm checking in every day just to see what he's saying. Cause
what kind of rant is Reynolds on today? Is it about school? Is it about politics?
Exactly.
Is it hockey? We'll never know.
What kind of thing am I going to learn today? But thanks to them for joining us this week. It was a weirdly a perfect week for them to jump on with us. There was very little wild news, so
this is quite the Minnesota goodbye, by the way. It's right.
Yeah. And after
20 minutes later,
after 107 podcasts, I never know how to end a podcast.
There's no good way. I mean, it's just hey, thanks for listening, and why don't you just listen next time too? Take it easy.
No.
Bye.
No. Not me. You can follow Ben and I on the Twitters at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. You can find our written work at zonecoverage.mn.com. And follow the podcast Twitter account at GATG Wild Podcast. We will be back next week with no more clip shows for you. And it might be, this actually weirdly might be our last podcast of the actual hockey season. Like, Pittsburgh could win it, and by the time we record again, it'll be actual off season. So we might actually have things to discuss rather than sit here in hypotheticals. But so yeah, that will wrap it up for this week, and we will see you next week.
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Nobody does me better. Makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you. Baby, you're the best.